You ever notice how some people look almost financially forgettable? Not broke, not struggling, just strangely invisible. A guy wearing the same gray hoodie every week, an old couple driving a 10-year-old Lexus that still smells like coffee and grocery bags. Someone using a cracked iPhone but quietly paying for everyone's dinner without checking the menu once. And meanwhile, somebody else is posting rooftop photos, designer shopping bags, airport selfies, hustle quotes, while stressing over a minimum payment due next Tuesday. That contrast feels backwards at first, because most of us grow up with a very cinematic idea of wealth. We think money announces itself. It enters the room loudly. Luxury watches, perfect teeth, a car that sounds expensive even when it's parked. So when someone actually has money but doesn't perform it, it creates this weird psychological confusion. You almost don't know where to place them. I remember a story from a guy named Eric who worked at a private marina in Florida. He said the richest customers were rarely the flashy ones. The loudest people usually leased things. The actual wealthy clients would arrive quietly, sometimes alone, wearing faded baseball caps, talking about weather patterns or fuel efficiency instead of status. One billionaire apparently carried his own snacks in a Ziploc bag because he hated wasting money at marinas. Which sounds ridiculous until you realize people who built wealth often learned to separate value from appearance a long time ago. That's one of the signs. Secretly wealthy people tend to care more about ownership than image. And ownership is boring to look at. A paid-off warehouse is boring. Index funds are boring. Equity is boring. Cash flow is boring. Debt-funded lifestyles are visually much more entertaining. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody really says out loud. A lot of what we call rich is actually just expensive-looking debt. And deep down, most people know this already. You probably know someone whose entire personality got more luxurious right after financing something. The car photos increased. The coffee shop laptop photos increased. Suddenly, every dinner became content. Not because they became wealthier psychologically, but because they needed the world to witness the upgrade. Real security behaves differently. There's less urgency to prove. And I think that's where another sign appears. Truly wealthy people often don't react emotionally to normal expenses. They don't make dramatic scenes over restaurant bills. They don't obsessively photograph luxury experiences. They don't turn every purchase into an identity statement. Ironically, the calmer someone is around money, the more suspicious it becomes. Because financially anxious people think about money constantly, even when spending it, especially when spending it. There's actually a psychological concept behind this called costly signaling. Humans display things to communicate status to others. It's ancient. Peacocks do it with feathers. Humans do it with brands. But here's the strange part. The signaling becomes strongest when someone is still trying to secure social position, not after they already feel secure. That flips the whole idea upside down. Sometimes the biggest flex is emotional neutrality. Not needing everybody to know. And you can see this in small ways. Secretly wealthy people often disappear from unnecessary competition. They stop chasing visible victories. You'll see someone living in a modest neighborhood even though they could easily move. Someone wearing simple clothes because decision fatigue annoys them more than repeating outfits. Someone keeping the same watch for 15 years because they like it and genuinely do not care what anybody thinks. Which sounds impossible to many people, because most of us have imagined this fantasy. If I ever become rich, everyone will finally see my value. That thought sits deeper than money. It's about recognition. And honestly, this is where the video becomes uncomfortable, because sometimes people don't want wealth. They want the emotional revenge fantasy attached to wealth. They want old classmates to notice, family members to regret underestimating them, strangers online to admire them. People who ignored them to suddenly pay attention. Money becomes proof, not freedom. And once you notice that, human behavior starts looking very different. You start realizing why some people buy things they don't even enjoy, why someone making $60,000 may look richer than someone worth $4 million, why certain people constantly mention prices in conversations. You know how much this cost? This hotel was insane. Business class changes your life. Sometimes that's excitement, but sometimes it's reassurance. A person quietly secure in themselves rarely narrates their worth out loud. There's another sign I find fascinating. Secretly wealthy people often protect their time more aggressively than their money. That one took me years to understand. Middle-class thinking often treats money as the scarce resource. Wealthy thinking starts treating attention and time as the scarce resource. So they outsource annoying tasks, avoid drama quickly, leave crowded places early, say no more often, disappear from social obligations that don't matter. At first, this can make them seem cold or detached, but maybe they simply learned something most people learn too late. Money can be recovered, attention cannot. And oddly enough, some secretly wealthy people become less visually ambitious over time, not more. That's the turn nobody expects. You'd think success increases hunger for status, but for some people, it reduces it completely. Because once they realize status never fully satisfies the insecurity underneath, the game starts feeling exhausting. So, instead of upgrading endlessly, they optimize for peace. A quiet house, predictable routines, financial margin, freedom from impressing people they don't even like. And maybe that's why secretly wealthy people can feel hard to identify. We're trained to spot performance, not stability. Performance is loud. Stability is quiet. One demands attention, the other doesn't need it. And maybe, while watching this, a small part of you recognized something uncomfortable in yourself, too. Maybe certain purchases weren't really about enjoyment. Maybe some goals were secretly about being seen. Maybe you imagined success less as freedom and more as finally becoming undeniable to other people. Most humans do this at some point. The strange thing is, the people who actually become financially secure often stop trying so hard to look important. Because the moment your self-worth stops depending on outside validation, luxury becomes optional instead of emotional. And that might be one of the clearest signs of all. If this kind of observation interests you, the strange psychology hiding inside everyday behavior, you'll probably enjoy the next video too.